Hey, how's it going, everybody? Act 0316 here. Alright, so there was another Republican presidential debate tonight, and I want to give my thoughts and discuss how I think the debate went, whether it was fairly moderated, and of course how it affects my candidate for president that I'm voting for, Dr. Paul. So, the Republican debate tonight had the standard 8 candidates. You had Dr. Paul, Mitt Romney, Rick Perry, Newt Gingrich, Herman Cain, Michelle Bachmann, John Huntsman, and Rick Santorum. Now, the main focal point of this debate was the issue of national security and America's foreign policy. And other topics were discussed, such as foreign aid. The deficit was touched on a little bit, and they were discussed because they're topics that tie into our foreign policy. And, even though they were touched on, the main focus was really our foreign policy. How does the president handle wars? How do we handle these other countries around the world? What is America's role from a global perspective? Now, one of my favorite policies that Dr. Paul has is his non-interventionist foreign policy. Dr. Paul has, constantly said when it comes to foreign affairs, we need to mind our own business. You have candidates like Rick Santorum and Mitt Romney up there who firmly believe that for some reason it is America's job to go and instill values across the world. Even Rick Santorum actually used that statement. To paraphrase, he said that in other countries we need to be this shining city on the hill, and we need to instill our values and our beliefs. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was always my understanding that this country was founded because a group of people got tired of another, more wealthy, more powerful group of people trying to tell them what to believe. We wanted the rights to believe what we wanted, and to think what we wanted, and to pursue our own dreams and our own livelihoods. So that's how this nation was founded. That's when we broke away, but now we're saying we can do the same thing because we are the best economy in the world. Even with our massive debt, we are the best economy because we have one of the best militaries, and we're one of the most industrialized and technologically sound countries in the world. For some reason, candidates like Rick Santorum and Mitt Romney, and even President Obama, think it's America's job to go over and try to meddle in the affairs of others and control the world. And I think that has a lot to do with the way America is looked at today by a lot of other countries and by a lot of media. If you'll notice, there are more jokes with America as the punchline today than ever before. The reason is because we have gotten this reputation of being a country that we try to push our beliefs and values on other, and like Rick Santorum says, we think we're this shining city on the hill that has to show the rest of the world, hey, this is the way to be, it's our way or no way. But when it comes right down to it, we can't even get, our own act together. Now, the subject of Iran getting a nuclear weapon came up. Now, here's a very interesting topic, because there's a lot of war propaganda floating around that the entire country of Iran, they hate the U.S., they hate us because we're free and we're prosperous and we're, a nation based in Christianity and free markets and freedom, and they hate us for that reason. And this is definitely just war propaganda, because there's this belief by the Obamas and the Santorums and the Romneys that no matter what America does, we are in the right. Now, I'm an American, and I'm very proud to say that, and I'm thankful to live in this country. I'm thankful to have the rights that the Founding Fathers laid out, and I'm, grateful for a lot of things. Grateful for our brave men and women in the military, grateful for this country and the opportunity to have these freedoms. But I'm one of those people who follows Dr. Paul's philosophy that America is doing a lot of things right now that are not right. For example, in Iran, a lot of people think, oh, Iran's had it out for us forever. They hate us just because we're free and prosperous. No. Iran has a problem with us because we just plain don't mind our own business. And if you go to Google and you type in the Shah of Iran, you'll see that we've been messing in Iran's business for years. Years before they did anything to us. And well, I realize there are some extremist groups over there, and you'll find those everywhere. Just look, we have our own groups here that cause a lot of controversy. But even though there are extremist groups, this whole idea that the whole country is just this radical nation, that once they become a nuclear nation, they're just going to start wiping countries off the face of the map. I'm here to tell you that's war propaganda. And, I'm sure Iran would like a nuclear weapon just to be able to get some respect in the global perspective, because they've been bullied and pushed around for years. And that alludes to what I was talking about earlier. While Santorum is saying we need to be this shining city on the hill and instill our values to the rest of the world, are our values the kind that, people like Obama and George W. Bush and Rick Santorum and Mitt Romney have promoted? This idea that we can just overthrow elected leaders, destroy established governments, fight other countries' wars, which is something that goes against our own rules, execute people without trials, tap phone lines, monitor private conversations. To me, that doesn't sound like the kind of values I would want anyone following. So when it comes right down to it, this idea that we need to, at all costs, stop Iran from becoming a nuclear nation, I think it's just preposterous. We're allowed to have nuclear weapons. We don't see any other countries coming to us and saying, you're in multiple undeclared wars, you've assassinated elected leaders, overthrown established governments, you shouldn't be a nuclear nation. This whole idea that America can do whatever it wants and there's no repercussions, but we're still somehow supposed to be the policeman of the world, is preposterous. It's like Dr. Paul said. It's war propaganda, and it's like he said, even if these wars were constitutional and declared and had good cause, we just can't afford them. We have absolutely no money here. We have a massive debt problem, a government that can't balance the budget, and the problem is, we have this idea that we can just spend all the money we want. Case in point, a topic that was discussed tonight was foreign aid, and an audience member brought up a topic, and this is actually something that I'd wondered about myself. There's this belief that if we stop sending aid to Africa right now at this moment, so many people there would die of starvation. And the question was asked, to all the candidates, how do you feel about foreign aid, and would you stop sending foreign aid to these countries? And Dr. Paul put it like this. He said the concept of foreign aid is pretty much a government taking money from the poor people in a rich country and giving it to the rich people in a poor country. What that means is this. When our government decides we need to send money overseas to countries and, continents and places, and to all these governments and these banks overseas, and they decide they need to send money, well, we don't have any money. So instead of cutting spending and being responsible, the government prints more money. The more there is of something, the greater the quantity supplied, less the quantity demanded, which means the value goes down. The greater the money supply becomes, the currency becomes diluted. So they print more money, and that creates an inflation tax, which means you have the same amount of money physically, but it just won't buy you as much. Like the old saying, your money doesn't go as far as it used to. Kind of like when you hear people saying, they used to be able to take $10 and get this much gas, now they have the same $10, but they can only get this much gas. And the rich people, they have enough money to cover that gap. They have enough money sitting around that they can say, okay, well, this same amount of food costs $10 now instead of $5. I'm rich, I can cover that no problem. But, I'm part of the middle class. I live in, a small apartment, but, I'm able to feed myself, keep my lights on, have a cell phone, and have a car, so I consider myself to be in the middle class. I'm able to have the luxuries of a car, of a phone, I can eat, and all that good stuff. So, we're the ones that pay for that. When the government prints money and the money supply gets diluted, we're the ones that have to pay for that. The inflation tax, that comes back on us because our money, the little bit of money we have, just won't go as far. Then when this money that is printed off is sent overseas, it's sent to these countries, and the idea that as soon as these countries get it, they just distribute it to the poor people, and they buy them food and shelter, that's just a little bit far-fetched, because if you send it to the government, obviously the government is going to be the most wealthy group there. And a government that would, let these people starve and be in poverty, they're not going to give all that money to those, poor people, those starving people. They're going to keep the better amount of it for themselves. So you took money from the poor people and the struggling people in a rich country like the United States, hurt the middle class by spreading this foreign aid, and then you sent it to a poor country, and the rich people got it. And that's what foreign aid really does. And Dr. Paul laid that out so perfectly, and it's such a brilliant statement. That's the sort of thing I like about Dr. Paul. He takes these topics that the media and the status quo can spin, and he just lays them out in such a truthful manner, but yet it's so easy to understand. And that goes back to what Dr. Paul was talking about spending. Dr. Paul said that, we're talking about starting new wars and new military action in new places, talking about sending more foreign aid, and we don't have any money here. We're almost $15 trillion in debt, and we're still spending like crazy. And Romney tried to step in and say, oh, we've cut $1 trillion, and Dr. Paul got a response. He got to respond, which I was really happy about, and he was able to say, all these cost-cutting measures that you guys are talking about, it's just talk. If you really were cutting costs, and if costs really were being cut at the moment, we'd see it. But obviously, they're just not. But that was pretty much the debate topics in a nutshell. Foreign policy was discussed. A lot of war propaganda saying, oh, every country in the world who doesn't like America for any reason, they don't like us because we're free and prosperous. We need to be the shining city on a hill, yada yada yada. And Dr. Paul basically saying, no, let's mind our own business. Let's fix our budget first. Let's help our people find some jobs and find out that their money can go further. Let's worry about ourselves. And that's not saying, oh, we only care about us. That's us saying we don't have the right to push other countries around and to tell the rest of the world how to live. And that's the candidate I think we need. That's the attitude this country needs to follow. As for how the debate was moderated, the moderator was Wolf Blitzer. Wolf usually does a decent job. It went better than it has before. Dr. Paul got a little more time than last time. He got time to respond when he was mentioned in another candidate's answer, which was good, but he still didn't get enough time. The other candidates still got more time. Of course, the media is still pandering to Perry and Romney, so of course they're going to get more time, but Dr. Paul says more in a very short time than Romney or Perry could say all night. So, but I think it's worth mentioning that, and I said this in my previous video, Dr. Paul is what we know as the candidate for the people. That means he's the candidate that is really opposed to big government, big spending, borrowing, inflation tax, and all these things that candidates like Perry and Romney and even President Obama are for. So the media realizes this, and we all know the establishment controls the media. We know that. And there's this idea that the media wants to always kind of back one candidate as the rebel, the anti-establishment candidate that's not for these, they're not for the government, they're for the people. And at first this candidate was Bachmann. They pushed her, they gave her a lot of media attention. Then the candidate was Kane, and they pushed him, they gave him a lot of media attention, and he even won the Florida straw poll because of that. And now the candidate they're pushing is Gingrich. They're trying to act like, oh, this is a level-headed, smart guy, and the guy who is for the people and against the establishment. He's the rebel. I'm here to tell you, no, he's not. This is just another cheap trick by the establishment to try to sway votes away from Ron Paul. And why doesn't the establishment want Ron Paul to get votes? Because he'll help the people. The government wants to stay big and to stay rich. They don't want the people to get back the power, and that's not saying, oh, there's going to be this huge revolution. No. But if the government continue borrowing and continue inflating, they're not going to suffer. They'll actually benefit. But a candidate like Dr. Paul, who wants to follow the Constitution and wants to help the common person out, the middle class, he is the candidate they're not going to give any attention to. So don't be swayed, and don't think, oh, Gingrich and Kane, they're the guys, because really in this day and age, if you want the truth, you really have to turn off your television. And that's not me trying to be comical or to make a sly remark, that's me honestly saying. If you watch TV all the time and you get your beliefs from the television and you take what they tell you as face value, you're not going to know the truth. The establishment controls the television, and they control that. That's one thing they have a lot of control over, so they're going to push the candidates they want. Don't think you're the only one who wants a candidate, and the government has candidates they want in too. Why do you think Obama was pushed so hard? Because he was inexperienced and green. The media ran this campaign that he was this dramatic revolutionary for change or for the people. In reality, they did that because they wanted him in, because he was, he was gullible. And he does what they tell him or he's gone. That's why so many of his beliefs changed as soon as he got in office. But back to what I was saying about Gingrich, he's not what the media paints him to be. He's a guy who said that if you're considered an enemy of America, you can be executed without trial. And the idea that they would suspend the right to trial, it's just like suspending free speech. It's one of our fundamental rights, and as soon as they start trampling on those, we need to say, we wouldn't vote for you in a million years. And the last thing I want to talk about in this video is something not really related to Dr. Paul directly, but he does tie into it. I want to talk about the Occupy Wall Street movement. Now, in case no one knows what this is, it's the basically we know in this country the wealth is skewed. They say 99% has, or the 1% has most of the wealth. That's not exactly true from a mathematical sense, but it's very close. And they say 90-some% of the people out there, we are that percentage that are struggling, and they're in New York and they're marching on Wall Street and they're saying you're doing well, and so few people are doing really well and so many people are struggling. Now the first thing I want to say is, let's be clear on this. That's not just a bunch of hippies out there beating bongo drums. That's a real movement. And all the people out there who, they make jokes and comics and memes making fun of this Wall Street movement, those are the people who they're not really smart enough to grasp what's going on. They're too lazy to do any research, and they find it easier to just make fun of something than really look into it. And it's like I said, it's really a movement. It's people out there saying, hey, something's wrong here. This is supposed to be a capitalist society and a free market. Why don't we have enough money to take the chance to start a business or, do something revolutionary like that? Why are so many of us out there just working 9 to 5, maybe 2, sometimes 3 jobs a week, if we can find them, to try to make ends meet and still coming up short, while these big corporations, they make all this money? But here's my take on that situation. I think their intentions are good, but I think their logic is slightly off. And what I mean by that is this: in a capitalistic economy, in a free market economy, like we're supposed to be, it's very important that people are able to start businesses and take risks, and that companies start and they blossom and they become big and they become successful. That's very important. That's the whole concept of a free market economy, and Austrian economics, which we should be following, that let the people start their businesses and let the people try things. It's very important these companies get big and become successful. The problem is not the companies. The problem is the federal government bailing out these companies. Because what happens when you need to bail out a company? 2 things happen. Number 1, you need money. And since we're a broke country, we print more money. And as we know, when we print money, the money supply grows, the currency becomes diluted, and our currency doesn't go as far as it did before, which means the middle class, the 99%, we suffer. And the other thing that happens is the company gets a bailout, and that's basically a license for them to say, hey, like the old saying goes, we're too big to fail. The government will always bail us out. And there's a video on YouTube where Dr. Paul is about to actually give a speech in New York, and some of these Occupy Wall Street protesters burst in, and they start these chants, and Dr. Paul is just smiling, and he lets them talk. He doesn't tell his security to kick them out. He sits there with a smile on his face, and he lets them talk, and he's like, you know what? He's like, I've been fighting for you, the 99%. He said, my whole career, he said, I've been saying that whenever the government makes bailouts, the debt gets dumped back on the poor people, and they shouldn't bail out, and we should spend, more time trying to shrink the government and give some of the power and some of the money and the jobs back to the people. So I hope they'll understand that it's not so much the corporation's fault, as it is the federal government. I think Dr. Paul really got across to them And I hope his message spreads like wildfire within that group, because he's a candidate who really is for the people, and I think that's just what they're wanting. They have a lot of angst, and they have a lot of vigor, certainly, and I think they're just wanting to see someone listen to them, and someone fight for them. So that's pretty much it for this video. To summarize, don't be fooled by Gingrich. Debate was pretty interesting, but it was kind of just like usual with Ron Paul not getting a lot of time. But Dr. Paul was trending on Twitter tonight, which is a big deal, because he was the only candidate trending there, which means people are becoming interested, which is very good, which is a very good sign. But I'm going to go ahead and close this video out now, and I'll just say, as I always do, I can't tell you who to vote for, and I certainly wouldn't try, but I can encourage you to do your research and stay educated. If you don't know about Ron Paul, certainly do your research and look him up and stay educated. And if you do know about Dr. Paul, be sure to spread the message as much as you can. Like I said, anything, make a blog, make a video like this. You can make it a response to mine. Wear a t-shirt, put a bumper sticker on your car, put it in your status message, put it in your status on Facebook, anything. And that's going to pretty much wrap it up for this video. And well, let me close by saying that if you haven't registered to vote, be sure you register, and make sure, if you live in a closed state, that you're registered as a Republican, so you can vote for Dr. Paul in the primaries. Because in a lot of states, you have to be registered several weeks prior to voting. So it may pay to go ahead and get that done. But as always, thanks for watching, and after the next debate, I'll probably make a video about that too. So see you next time.